I'm Latif from BevNET. I'm here with John Craven. We're at the 2016 Summer Fancy Food Show here in New York City. John, another pretty bustling show here in New York. The Summer Fancy Food Show has become a pretty big hub for beverage companies who want to come in a market in the New York City area.
Definitely. I mean, I think the timing of it, the location, all of those things sort of, make this a great show. It had a couple of years where it was a little slower, but, seems like it's definitely back as, one of the bigger, important shows for this industry.
Yeah, and it's not just retailers that are coming to see some of these exhibitors that are just coming from the specialty foods channel. You're seeing exhibitors like Walmart, H-E-B, and a few other ones that are, again, not necessarily a Dean and DeLuca. These bigger retailers are looking for smaller brands, innovative ideas.
Right, and I think that's something that, everyone thinks of this as like specialty food show. I think we've talked about this in the past, but, it's something that is much more broad than that. So,
yeah.
It's really just a place that has a lot of, entrepreneurial startup brands making premium products, I would say, is kind of the common theme.
Yeah, and, some of these emerging brands, some of these developing brands are starting to realize that food service is becoming an important part of their business, or at least could be. From teas to craft soda, kombucha even. We heard from exhibitors who talked about food services, the potential there to be a very significant part of their business.
Yeah, I think that's always interesting. I think, food service is something that as you see this kind of shift away from, some of the bigger kind of unhealthy type products, you're seeing opportunity for entrepreneurial brands, even things like soda and sparkling beverages, to kind of go into food service and on-premise in ways that they haven't been able to in the past.
We saw last year dry soda change their name from dry soda to dry sparkling. Recently we saw Joya take that leap too, go from Joya soda to Joya sparkling. And we heard from a lot of different exhibitors that, craft soda exhibitors, that it's becoming harder and harder to sell that four-letter word.
Yeah, and I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, you hear that over and over again, that soda is a four-letter word, which, a lot of these companies, their change, is one just of literally the wording.
Right.
Some are continuing to cut sugar, but a lot of it is just taking something that used to be called soda, calling it sparkling, and I think that's something that makes sense. I mean, outside of sort of classic soda flavors, like you can't call a cola a sparkling beverage.
No.
Like that's a soda, right? But if you're making something that has a more, unique flavor, it kind of makes sense. Those products weren't ever really like a perfect fit for soda anyway. So, I think that's something that we're going to continue to see until, I guess, soda's wiped off the map or something. So
yeah, I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
Which probably isn't going to happen.
But sparkling water is definitely picking up a lot of the business from sparkling, for sure. From soda, for sure. One of the things that we saw today was Polar pressing and pushing into different parts of the country. Polar being based in the Worcester, Massachusetts area. Very much a regional brand, for its entire lifetime. And now they're really pushing into the Mid-Atlantic. They're pushing to the Midwest. And I talked to their vice president of sales, who said they're going to be even pushing further than that. It's just a matter of really getting the distribution network in place.
Right, and I think that's something that, is obviously a challenge for any brand, one that has its roots in being a distributor perhaps has a little advantage, but we'll see.
One other category where it seems like brands are trying to take advantage of that health and wellness trend that's permeating throughout all the food and beverage industry is tea. We saw a lot of different takes on tea at this show. Cold brewed tea, we saw Cam, we saw Evi, we saw sparkling tea from Sound, we saw Teonic, which is a tea and tonic product. It's a really interesting way to differentiate yourself. Some of these brands that clearly don't have, the traction and the brand awareness of an Honest tea, but, they're making good products.
Yeah, and I think, all or most, if not all of those brands that you mentioned are not, first-time exhibitors either. This is sort of that place where they're trying to incubate and, get some traction. It seems like just in talking to them that the climate for what they're doing, another, year having passed is that much better. So,
right.
We'll see which of any of those break out. So,
yeah, I mean, and I didn't mention Owl's Brew, but Owl's Brew is a really good example of another brand that's using tea to differentiate themselves in the cocktail mixer category. And interesting, the thing that they showed at this show was their Radler, which is a blend of their tea mix and beer.
Yeah, and I think we also saw that with Joya, who's doing their cocktail in a can, which is actually like spirit based.
Joya Spirit.
Joya Spirit.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we had been talking about at other shows, this sort of idea that some of these cocktail mixer brands would move into their own ready-to-drink. So finally seeing that happening this year.
Yeah, and when the mixer category continues to grow, there's the folks that we saw last year are here again, and they're slightly bigger brews, a few different line extensions, and then there's some brands that are just brand new here at the show. A couple ones that are also not necessarily mixers but enhancers we saw was that really stood out for us was Alice and the Magician, which makes those cocktail aromatics. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of, everything about it. It's got this sort of funky, whimsical brand to it too, right? But it's, it's really neat. It's something that as people in the industry, it really, kind of gives a new experience, which is fun. So hard to understand how commercially viable stuff like that is, though. So preface it with that, I guess.
The last category that I think, kind of wanted to talk about was coffee. Obviously, a big standout at this show, well, obviously for us, not necessarily for those who weren't here, was Calafia's new Nitro cold brew. Pretty clean-looking product, nice-looking product, good-tasting product.
Yeah, I think, Nitro cold brew at this point sounds like whatever, but, they did it dairy-free with almond and macadamia milk. It's really, pretty incredible just how, the Nitro actually enhances the texture such that they've really achieved something that, tastes like milk, but it's not. And, I think that was definitely like the standout product introduction of the show. It's also, one of the few like real new product introductions at the show as opposed to a line extension or, change or whatever. So
yeah, and you talked to Greg a little bit about that in a video interview, and it was interesting to hear his take on, cold brew sort of being a little bit more for a male consumer, and this opportunity with Nitro opening up the doors for female consumers.
Definitely. And I think, the other thing that obviously everyone in the category is watching is just what Starbucks does with their Nitro cold brew rollout this summer. So I think that's something that everyone's hoping will kind of, get some consumer education out there and really create an awareness that I think on the Nitro side, it still has a little ways to go.
Yeah. Some other interesting things, that we saw in Calfee were, a few different companies exhibiting bulletproof style coffees, those butter coffees, that MCT oil infused coffee. We saw a squeeze pack butter coffee. We saw a brand called Meta Brew, which was in the Brooklyn innovation section here at the show. Good looking products, good tasting products. It seems like that trend is something that people are paying attention to, at least entrepreneurs, and that customers still have some demand for.
Yeah, it seems like until Bulletproof comes out with their own like ready to drink coffee, I think we're going to continue to see companies trying to figure that out. The only thing that sort of stands out to me about that is that at this point they're all sort of kind of offering. It's kind of a compromise of, the coffee isn't like the best coffee out there. It's, instant or whatever it is to get that, MCT benefit, which I think is something that has to, they have to work on. So,
well, we'll see how it goes. Lots more to come this year for sure.
Definitely.
All right. Well, that's all we have from this show. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for much more coverage from the 2016 Fancy Food Show in the days to come.